Welcome, everyone. And my name is Silvia Bigatti, and I am a co-presenter here for So You Want to Teach in Higher Education.
Hi, I'm Melody Moore, and I'm also a presenter for So You Want to Teach in Higher Education.
We're happy you're all here. Next slide, please. So we were asked to do introductions and talk a little bit about ourselves, but we decided that we try to do that within our presentation. It makes more sense to do it at those points in time. If you happen to have any questions or we left something out towards the end, make sure to ask us questions, or we ourselves will add it at the end of the presentation. We just want to make sure we have enough time for the material that we are presenting. Next slide, please.
Our learning objectives for today are to understand the requirements for teaching in higher education, to be able to discuss different settings for teaching in higher education, to be able to discuss different types of teaching positions in higher education, and to be able to discuss the benefits and disadvantages of each of these positions. Next slide, please. There are many different types of teaching roles. We've divided them into non-tenure track and tenure track. So under the category of non-tenure track, there are adjunct instructors, associate, part-time, and contributing faculty. These are part-time instructors that work at various universities, and they typically do not get any benefits, or they're not considered a full FTE. There are also lecturers and teaching professors. Several universities offer these positions, usually for a limited period of time. And then there are core faculty. And these are also positions that are usually temporary, part-time. In terms of tenure track, these are what we would consider full-time, full benefit positions. There's assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor. Various universities have different criteria for each one of these positions. If you want to ask specific questions about that, we can talk a little bit more about that at the end. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. So now that you have an idea of the different roles or different ways you can be hired into an institution of higher education, let's talk about the different types of institutions that exist. So I put fully online universities here at the very top because that's where we're at right now. And actually, that's where a lot of our students who want to move on to teaching want to teach. So Walden is a great example of a fully online university, and a fully online university has both core faculty, and we have several core faculty here today, and core faculty are full-time faculty at Walden who dedicate the full time of their work. It is their main job for Walden. And then we have contributing faculty like Dr. Moore and myself, who just teach different classes at different points in times where we kind of get hired to do that. And this is the equivalent of part-time or adjunct positions, associate. There's various names for this type of faculty. But they do work in fully online universities in significant amounts. There are a lot of fully online universities. They may be like Walden, which goes all the way from bachelor's to doctoral degrees. They may be only for undergraduate degrees, or they may be only for graduate degrees. They each have their own mission statement, and they might attract different types of students depending on that. I know a lot of our students come to Walden because of the mission of social change of the university. So if you're interested in teaching fully online, you might want to explore the different universities that there are, again, many of them. and try to get a very good sense of what they're like, what kind of courses they offer, what approaches they have to teaching. There's also community colleges, and community colleges are a great place for our graduates to teach. I started at a community college when I started my college training here. I did 2 years at a community college. It was a great experience. I always tell my students, of the 3 professors that I most remember as the best professors I ever had, 2 of them were actually from the community college. Community colleges, like fully online universities, have a main mission of teaching. And so their goal is to teach. Community colleges typically offer associate's degrees, and then many of their students go on to a 4-year college. You can be tenure track at a community college. You can be part-time, associate, etc. You can be there's many names for, depending on the community college. And community colleges are spread out throughout the country. I did my training in California, and the California community college system is very well integrated with the 4-year colleges. And so it was a very seamless transition for me. I have spoken to Walden students that teach in various community colleges. I know Ohio, for example, seems to be like California, and students who teach in community colleges in Ohio seem to be very happy. Our students who teach there seem to be very happy with their experience. Small liberal arts colleges are typically 4-year degrees, typically bachelor's, maybe master's. They often do not have necessarily doctoral degrees. I understand, Dr. Moore, you graduated from a small liberal arts college.
Yes, and I think one of the benefits is that it's more of an intimate setting, and you get to know your faculty, and the classes are smaller. You get to know your classmates.
And a lot of these are tremendously prestigious, and a lot of these cater to certain degrees or certain fields of study. So like with everything I've spoken so far, if you're interested in teaching in a small liberal arts college, which now towards the end of my career, I think I would have loved to do it for the reasons Dr. Moore said: small classes, intimate, you get to know the students well. Usually they're within a little college town, which sounds kind of idyllic, at least for me, maybe not for a lot of other people. It certainly was not the case for my children when I was looking for places to work. They wanted me to find a city. But anyways, small liberal arts colleges are a great option for our students to go into if they want to teach after the PhD. Then there's HBCUs, which are historically Black colleges and universities. Those differ in size, and again, throughout the country. Some of them are very, very well known. Morehouse is one of them. I've had students from Morehouse come and work with me in the summer, and a very nice place for a lot of students of color to get trained in. I've had students from Texas, I think it's Texas A&M, who said that they just love the fact that it was a historically Black college and a place that catered to the experience of Black students. I don't know that much in terms of becoming employed there, but I think they're a great opportunity if you are looking for places to teach, for you to explore those. State universities, I trained at a state university, traditional state university. State universities can be Research One universities or not. Typically for teaching at a state university, teaching is not the main goal of the university, incredibly enough. It is research. And so an interesting choice. It may be what you want to do. Some of you are in the research track. If what you're interested in is teaching, you might not want to do a state university. State universities do take everything from all the way from tenure track, which was on this side, on the right side of the slide, when Dr. Moore presented the different roles, but they also take lecturers, sometimes called teaching professors. They take part-time faculty, often called adjunct faculty, and of course, tenure track. Tenure track is very tough. You might want to think about whether you want to do that at a state university. It's very tough to get through. And the problem with tenure track is you have typically 5 years to earn tenure, and you earn tenure through incredible productivity. And then if you earn tenure, that's great, you stay. If you don't earn tenure, you have to go. So state universities are one option, maybe not the best option for students who want to teach. And then there's private universities, which may or may not be Ivy League. Again, a lot of private universities across this country with, just like fully online universities, unique missions, unique cultures that you want to explore. A lot of our students want to teach as an adjunct to something else that they do. And so if that is the case for you, pretty much all of these are options for you. Community college, small liberal arts colleges are the least likely to take adjunct faculty, which is like what Dr. Moore and I are for Walden, but every single one of the others is likely to hire you to teach a class every once in a while. It's a very good way to stay connected. I actually did my clinical internship at Yale, which is an Ivy League, and we had a lot of clinical faculty, people who were therapists in the community, who also had an association with Yale, which was very valuable for them, of course. And what they did was they served either teaching a class here and there, or also being clinical supervisors. I was supervised by several clinicians throughout the community, and that gave them an association. So private universities, Ivy Leagues might be a way to be adjunct. State universities, definitely. HBCUs, I imagine, and community colleges and fully online universities for sure. So let's move on to the next slide, which is the best one, how Walden prepares you for a teaching career. So we do have a teaching track, which if you're in, you probably have a lot of this information. I saw that several of you have either taken the teaching of psychology course or the teaching practicum course. Even if you're not on the teaching track, I was not on the teaching track, and I've been teaching my entire career ever since I earned my PhD. So basically you become proficient in the content of psychology. So you develop knowledge. In the teaching practicum, which I cover, so I'm going to talk about it a lot, you actually practice teaching a Psychology 101 course. And I always tell students, you develop a lot of knowledge about the field of psychology and your specific specialization as you go through doctoral training. But you also will develop more and more as you teach and as you go through your career. So I know like 1,000 times more about psychology than I did when I graduated. And yet I was still very capable of teaching a Psych 101 course or a health psychology course, which was my specialization. So the core content courses that you take already prepare you to be able to impart that knowledge to students, typically undergraduate students. You also become proficient in the methods. You will complete a dissertation where you will do a research study. You have been taking lots of methods courses. We also have several courses that are part of the teaching track that you may take outside of that. Being mindful of the time. And finally, as I said, there's a teaching practicum. You either do a research practicum or a teaching practicum. Whichever one you do is useful for you as an instructor after you graduate, because as you may remember from your undergraduate studies, if you were in psychology, every single psychology content course has at the very beginning of research in cognitive, research in health, etc. So taking a research course would be helpful, but if you take the teaching practicum course, you get to practice a lot of the tasks that you would be doing if you were teaching a course. So I think it prepares you well, and I invite those of you who have taken any of these courses to share your experiences on the chat as well. And so next slide, please. So here we are to the end of the presentation. Dr. Moore, I got a little bit nervous because Dr. Moore was there next to me and then she disappeared. There you are. I thought maybe you had been dropped or something.
Yeah, technology.
So, good. So I don't know if Dr. Moore, you wanted to add anything that I had missed before we go.
I think you covered it. You covered it very well. I'm like you, teaching was one of the first jobs I had after I got my PhD, and I just love teaching. I love the interaction with students, and I learn just as much from my students as they probably learn from me. And I do agree, it keeps us fresh and it keeps us on our toes and keeps us updated with all of the latest research. So I'm excited to see if we have any questions.
Okay, so questions from our participants.
And if you have those questions, you can go ahead and put those into the chat area. And while you all are doing that, we have had some comments previously as you both were presenting that kind of highlighted that there were a few people who could relate to what you were speaking of, had similar experiences, and they also pointed out particular things that they enjoyed about those experiences, which we are so grateful to all of you for inputting that info. Our first question is, have you ever had trouble getting a teaching position?
Okay, Dr. Moore, do you want to start with that one and then I'll follow up?
I've never had trouble getting a teaching position, but for first-time students, I recommend starting at a small school, a community college, a small liberal arts college, because just as it's intimate for students, it's intimate for new faculty. And a lot of universities will give you a mentor and have a lot of support systems in place for new faculty. I know Walden also has a new faculty course. And I think we assign mentors. I'm pretty sure you can find one if you need one, but it's very, I think it's supportive and helpful to start in a smaller environment. That way you can kind of get your feet wet and figure out what it feels like to teach a class, to design your curriculum, to make your tests, to come up with your syllabus, and then you have people around you that can help you.
Thank you. And I'd like to add a little bit to that and cover Dr. Sickles' question, which follows, which is, yes, start in a smaller school, in a smaller program, somewhere where there's a lot of support. Our students, or not necessarily all, over my career, I've seen that people experience what is called imposter syndrome. And actually, I've heard it from medical students that become doctors. So it is a common thing for when you graduate and have a pretty responsible job, right? And teaching is definitely a responsible job. And so getting over that imposter syndrome, and the imposter syndrome is this idea of like, What do you mean I'm in the front of the classroom? I've been sitting on the other side all these years. What am I doing up here? Well, you're ready. If we say you're ready and we gave you the degree, you're ready. So it just takes a few semesters to get over that, depending on how much you teach. And I would, although I never ever recommend that your full-time job, that your source of income be adjuncting. And in the teaching practicum course, I share a lot of information about that. Serving as an adjunct, like Dr. Moore and I do at Walden, is a great way to start, and teaching, starting slow. And oftentimes I have seen that people who start as part-time faculty become then full-time faculty, either in a lecturer position, maybe even in a tenure track position. So sometimes you just need to get your foot in the door by saying, you know what, I have this expertise. I understand one of your faculty members is ill, family leave, traveling, sabbatical. I will cover that class. That gets your foot in the door. You do a nice job. Students appreciate you. You get well with others. You go along well with others. And then suddenly you found your home. And so that's a very good way to start. Another way, if you have absolutely no teaching experience, is offer to lecture. I typically, in my full-time job, I have people that come and do lectures. So they're specialists that talk about things. A lot of our students have clinical degrees. And in an abnormal psychology course or in a psychopathology course, they might invite you to come and talk about certain conditions or your experiences. That also gets your foot in the door. So there's a lot of ways to get started.
Awesome. Our next question is, would you consider Walden a small university or a big university, considering that Walden is an online university?
Well, student size, it is a very big university. And it feels small to me. I have been here many, many years, but Walden does a very good job of creating community among the instructors. So I feel like even though I don't know a lot of people, I think it's the first time Dr. Moore and I have seen each other's faces. We've been connecting for quite a bit of time because we both teach teaching. So, and because it's online, you don't get the sense of the massive campus either. So I think it feels small to me. Dr. Moore, what do you think?
I think it feels small and intimate. I do agree that the School of Psychology does a great job of fostering a sense of community. It's a large school in terms of student population and probably in terms of number of faculty that we hire. But if you break your university down by college, by department, by specialization, it's smaller.
Awesome. Our last question is, can you suggest ways to get opportunities for lecturing if you work and are a student at Walden University?
Dr. Moore, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, again, find your area of specialty, and as you take classes, introduce yourself to faculty, share some of your knowledge, share some of your expertise, and ask your various faculty that you meet along your journey if they ever have a need for visiting lectures, and then volunteer your services.
So, I totally second that. So for example, and again, I keep saying, and I'm not even in the clinical program, I'm in the health program here at Walden, but there are a lot of students that come to the health program with clinical backgrounds. So if you are a member of your state clinical association, state psychological association, you might go to the meetings, and there will be people who are also members, but are professors, instructors, lecturers in a local university. And that may be a way to start connecting with them, networking, and saying, hey, you know, I've been doing a lot of work in I don't know, EMDR. If you ever want me to come and talk to your class about that, I'd be happy to. Or this new assessment that came out, I'll be happy to come. And so those are ways to get your foot in the door. As with any job in any field, it's all about networking. And so start networking now, start making connections now. And when you do your dissertation, let that be your calling card, make it your specific little area of expertise. You try to publish it in a scientific journal, but also try to put it out there in some other form that may be more accessible to students and faculty. I know younger faculty who are just starting to use social media a lot, LinkedIn and Twitter incredibly. So now young faculty who are trying to build up their resume for tenure are using Twitter to disseminate their publications or their research, because then it gets looked at more, and though there's some metrics that get noted for that then count in favor of those faculty. And you can do the same thing. There's a lot of useless stuff on Twitter, but there's a lot of really, really good stuff. And I follow PhD students just to stay connected to my student population. But I also follow quite a few experts in things that are interesting to me. And when they publish or when they read something interesting, they put it out there. Those are good ways to put yourself out there. And suddenly somebody says, hey, I see that you're in this state. Would you like to come and talk to my class? That has happened.
Awesome, thank you. And in addition to your great information, we've also had individuals in the chat provide some additional resources as well. Is there anything either of you would like to add as our closing?
I'd like to second what Dr. Morris said. It is a very rewarding career. And I always say that even though on the outside I'm aging, on the inside I'm always young, because you kind of have to stay up to date with newer generations and you have to accommodate to newer generations. And so it's a great way to stay connected to the ground and connected to people, and just a very, very rewarding career.
Yes, I agree.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. We again want to thank you all for joining us. We hope you take advantage of the opportunities to attend other academic events hosted by Walden. Please also watch your email for instructions on how to access session recordings, and be sure to complete the event survey. We look forward to hearing your feedback. Now, please return to the session catalog to join the next session, and that is titled Living in a Digital World. And we've also added a direct link to access the session catalog in the chat. See you all in the next session. Thank you so much.